briskly and effectively by a trial at some assizes which happened to fix the public attention. End of footnote. And the analogy of theatres was urged against us, where no man can complain of the annoyances incident to the pit or gallery, having his instant remedy in paying the higher price of the boxes. But the soundness of this analogy we disputed. In the case of the theatre, it cannot be pretended that the inferior situations have any separate attractions, unless the pit suits the purpose of the dramatic reporter. But the reporter or critic is a rarity. For most people, the sole benefit is in the price; whereas, on the contrary, the outside of the mail had its own incommunicable advantages. These we could not forego. The higher price we should willingly have paid, but that was connected with the condition of riding inside, which was insufferable. The air, the freedom of prospect, the proximity to the horses, the elevation of seat, these were what we desired, but, above all, the certain anticipation of purchasing occasional opportunities of driving. Under coercion of this great practical difficulty, we instituted a searching inquiry into the true quality and valuation of the different apartments about the mail. We conducted this inquiry on metaphysical principles, and it was ascertained satisfactorily that the roof of the coach, which some had affected to call the attics, and some the garrets, was really the drawing-room, and the box was the chief ottoman or sofa in that drawing-room; whilst it appeared that the inside, which had been traditionally regarded as the only room tenantable by gentlemen, was, in fact, the coal-cellar in disguise. Great was this jump. The very same idea had not long before struck the celestial intellect of China. Amongst the presents carried out by our first embassy to that country was a state coach. It had been specially selected as a personal gift by George III, but the exact mode of using it was a mystery to Pekin. The ambassador, indeed, Lord Macartney, had made some dim and imperfect explanations upon the point; but as his Excellency communicated these in a diplomatic whisper, at the very moment of his departure the celestial mind was very feebly illuminated, and it became necessary to call the cabinet council on the grand state question, where was the emperor to sit? The hammercloth happened to be unusually gorgeous, and partly on that consideration, but partly also because the box offered the most elevated seat, and undeniably went foremost, it was resolved by acclamation that the box was the imperial place, and, for the scoundrel who drove, he might sit where he could find a perch. The horses therefore being harnessed, under a flourish of music and a salute of guns, solemnly his imperial majesty ascended his new English throne, having the first lord of the treasury on his right hand, and the chief jester on his left. Pekin gloried in the spectacle. And in the whole flowery people, constructively present by representation, there was but one discontented person, which was the coachman. This mutinous individual, looking as black-hearted as he really was, audaciously shouted, "Where am I to sit?" But the Privy Council, incensed by his disloyalty, unanimously opened the door, and kicked him into the inside. He had all the inside places to himself, but such is the rapacity of ambition that he was still dissatisfied. "I say," he cried out in an extempore petition, addressed to the emperor through the window, "how am I to catch hold of the reins?" "Anyhow," was the answer. "Don't trouble me, man, in my glory. Through the windows, through the keyholes, how you please." Finally, this contumacious coachman lengthened the check-strings into a sort of jury reins, communicating with the horses. With these he drove as steadily as may be supposed. The emperor returned after the briefest of circuits. He descended in great pomp from his throne, with the severest resolution never to remount it. A public thanksgiving was ordered for his majesty's prosperous escape from the disease of a broken neck, and the state coach was dedicated forever as a votive offering to the god Fo Fo, whom the learned more accurately called Fi Fi. A revolution of this same Chinese character did young Oxford of that era effect in the constitution of mail coach society. It was a perfect French revolution, and we had good reason to say ça ira. In fact, it soon became too popular. The public, a well-known character, particularly disagreeable, though slightly respectable, and notorious for affecting the chief seats in synagogues, had at first loudly opposed this revolution. But when the opposition showed itself to be ineffectual, our disagreeable friend went into it with headlong zeal. At first it was a sort of race between us, and as the public is usually above 30, say generally from 30 to 50 years old, naturally we of young Oxford, that averaged about 20, had the advantage. Then the public took to bribing, giving fees to horsekeepers, etc., who hired out their persons as warming pans on the box seat. That, you know, was shocking to our moral sensibilities. Come to bribery, we observed, and there is an end to all morality, Aristotle's, Cicero's, or anybody's. And besides, of what use was it? For we bribed also. And as our bribes to those of the public being demonstrated out of Euclid to be as 5 shillings to 6pence, here again young Oxford had the advantage. But the contest was ruinous to the principles of the stable establishment about the mails. The whole corporation was constantly bribed, rebribed, and often sir-rebribed, so that a horsekeeper, ostler, or helper was held by the philosophical at that time to be the most corrupt character in the nation. There was an impression upon the public mind, natural enough from the continually augmenting velocity of the mail, but quite erroneous, that an outside seat on this class of carriages was a post of danger. On the contrary, I maintained that if a man had become nervous from some gipsy prediction in his childhood, allocating to a particular moon now approaching some unknown danger, he should inquire earnestly, "Whither can I go for shelter? Is a prison the safest retreat, or a lunatic hospital, or the British Museum?" I should have replied, "Oh no, I'll tell you what to do. Take lodgings for the next 40 days on the box of His Majesty's mail. Nobody can touch you there. If it is by bills at 90 days after date that you are made unhappy, if noters and protesters are the sort of wretches whose astrological shadows darken the house of life, then note you what I vehemently protest, viz., that no matter though the sheriff in every county should be running after you with his posse, touch a hair of your head he cannot whilst you keep house and have your legal domicile on the box of the mail. It's felony to stop the mail. Even the sheriff cannot do that. And an extra, no great matter if it grazes the sheriff, touch of the whip to the leaders at any time guarantees your safety. In fact, a bedroom in a quiet house seems a safe enough retreat. Yet it is liable to its own notorious nuisances, to robbers by night, to rats, to fire. But the mail laughs at these terrors. To robbers the answer is packed up and ready for delivery in the barrel of the guard's blunderbuss. Rats again. There are none about mail coaches, any more than snakes in Van Troil's Iceland. Except, indeed, now and then a parliamentary rat, who always hides his shame in the coal cellar. And, as to fire, I never knew but one in a mail coach, which was in the Exeter mail, and caused by an obstinate sailor bound to Devonport. Jack, making light of the law and the lawgiver that had set their faces against his offence, insisted on taking up a forbidden seat in the rear of the roof, from which he could exchange his own yarns with those of the guard. No greater offence was then known to mail coaches. It was treason. It was lesa majestas. It was by tendency arson. And the ashes of Jack's pipe, falling amongst the straw of the hinder boot, containing the mail bags, raised a flame which, aided by the wind of our motion, threatened a revolution in the republic of letters. But even this left the sanctity of the box unviolated. In dignified repose, the coachman and myself sat on, resting with benign composure upon our knowledge that the fire would have to burn its way through 4 inside passengers before it could reach ourselves. With a quotation rather too trite, I remarked to the coachman, "Jam proximus ardetur Calegon." But recollecting that the